Greetings, my friends, and welcome to a lesson that is going to rain down upon you with knowledge. Sorry about that. I just had to. This lesson's all about rain. And maybe you know a lot about vapors and condensation and even the water cycle. You know, evaporation, condensation, precipitation. Yeah, you know how the water cycle boogie goes. So let's talk a little bit more about rain. Take a look at this chart. It's showing us how rain forms, right? And I bet you can even see the three parts of our water cycle there. You can see the air moving over the water and picking up moisture as the sun shines down on that water and excites it, causes it to get lighter, rise, expand with the air. But then, look, it meets a cliff and it has to climb up. And, you know, as it does that, it's going to cool. And what happens next? Well, as it cools, it can't hold on to that moisture it has anymore, and so it's going to drop rain, precipitation. Now, this kind of rain is what we refer to as local rain. It's being caused by a local condition. You see, we've got that body of water and that cliff. You don't always have those things. There could be other local conditions that cause rain too. But I'd like to also tell you about another kind of rain that occurs in places where it is really hot. Take a look at this chart. This is definitely a nice place. Wouldn't you like to be sitting on that beach sipping some delicious lemonade right now? I bet you would. But there's something you should be aware of before you do that. You see, that hot air is very hot, and the water is evaporating quite a lot in this place. I mean, it's really hot. You can see the water practically rising up into the air. And it just keeps evaporating, and more moisture goes into the air, and it blows over the land. And then, sometime closer to the end of the afternoon, or maybe even right before the evening, there's so much moisture, and the temperature has come down just enough that it dumps that rain all over the land. It's quite a storm. And we call this kind of rain equatorial rain. Where do you think most equatorial rains are going to happen? You can sort of hear it in that word equatorial. Yeah, near the equator and very hot places that are like those places around the equator and obviously near water. You know, these equatorial regions actually experience rain around the same time of day too. If you notice, I mentioned around later afternoon, evening, just as that sun's starting to go down and things are starting to cool. The air spent the whole day filling up with water, so just a little bit of cooling down, and it really starts to rain. Now, these rains can also be seasonal, and maybe you remember those charts showing you all the changes of precipitation and wind. So sometimes these rains are going to be more active during parts of the year and less active during other parts of the year. And some of these rains even have names. Maybe you can find one of those names. But check this chart out, because we talked about really hot places. What about places where it can get really cold? Well, take a look. You can see a mountain. You can see that the moisture and the warm air is climbing up the mountain. And imagine if you're climbing up a mountain. You have a backpack full of stuff that's maybe even growing as you climb the mountain. And you get further up that mountain and it's just, getting so hard. And that's happening for the air too. As it climbs up the mountain, what's happening with the temperature? It's getting cooler, maybe even quite cold. And the same thing with the other types of rain. Once it gets cool enough, that water's too heavy for the air to hold it anymore, and it comes tumbling down. And maybe if it's cold enough, we might even get some of that other stuff. Snow! How fantastic, right? Well, this is a little bit of a different kind of rain forming here. We call this orographic rain. And that comes from two words. The Greek word oros, which means mountain, and graphe, which means writing, because it's as if the mountains are writing with rain. And sometimes you can see these clouds drifting off the tops of mountains too, as if the mountain's a giant crayon just drawing in the sky. So there's several types of rain, and I'm wondering, have you ever seen one of these types of rain before? Maybe you could write a story about that. Or maybe you'd like to draw your own version of one of these types of rain. Or go back to your seasonal winds and precipitation charts and maybe choose a place to show that rain cycle happening. You could even mix a little bit of the water cycle into this too. Whatever you choose to do, I can't wait to see how you precipitate your condensated knowledge. Have fun!